everyone. This is Tom Moore, better known to most of you as Purple Pain from VikeFans.com, and I'd like to welcome former Minnesota Vikings defensive lineman and Twin Cities legendary celebrity Bob Lurtsema to our Legends of the Longship broadcast series. Bob, we're thrilled to have you on VikeFans.com, and how are you today?
Well, anytime I'm talking to Viking fans, I'm pretty upbeat. 5 years I was with the Vikings. I had so many great memories and a roller coaster ride second to none. So I'm tickled pink to be talking to you.
Excellent. Well, Bob, you've successfully reinvented yourself many times since your playing career ended, having been a publisher, a commercial spokesman, a motivational speaker, and even a Twin Cities activist, and you still had time to be an owner of a successful chain of restaurants. I know you still remain very busy in the Twin Cities. Can you tell the fans what projects you're involved with these days?
I do a lot of different charity work. You know, I work with the Special Olympics almost from day one with the Make-A-Wish. The banquets themselves, I do some motivation talks for corporations. I'm on the board of advisors with the Minnesota Vikings, so that keeps me around the players all the time. And I'm in the press box, of course, for the games. And I do a lot of TV and radio work. But so I'm a diversified entrepreneur with actually no job, because my whole career I've been lucky enough to love what I've done, so I really never even considered it to be a job, no matter what I was doing. But I'll tell you one thing, the fans, without them, you know, we wouldn't have been able to play the greatest game in the world. And more importantly, when I do the charity work, especially with the Special Olympics and whatnot, I get more of a reward than what they do. It's just a sensational feeling that sometimes it's hard to describe what they give back and how much love they have in their souls. So everything's been positive, and somebody loves me upstairs, I think. It's been wonderful.
I think they love you in the Twin Cities as well, and I want to take you back in your career as we start our conversation and ask you, at what point in your life did you realize that playing professional football might be a reality and that's what you wanted to do?
After I retired. I never, ever thought that I'd be a professional football player. How people can say, well, they're 8 years old and they want to be a ball player. Because I played football, basketball, and baseball. I went to college on basketball scholarship for a while, and I had a chance for the Tigers in baseball. But the thing my mom and dad always taught me basically was, to have fun and just do the best you can. And to look beyond the next upcoming game, whether it's in 5th grade, 10th grade, college, I never did that. And when I did go to the Baltimore Colts, and I lined up against Sam Ball, the number 1 draft choice, offensive tackle, I said to myself, well, it's been a nice run. Here I am. I'm going to get it handed to me right now. I'm a free agent. I'm out of here. But I gave it the best I can, and I actually happened to beat Sam on that particular play, and that surprised me, believe it or not, because if you read your articles and think how great you are, I think you lose sometimes some of your motivation and your second effort to continue to keep getting better and better. And I went, man, here is All-American number 1 draft choice, so maybe I do have an opportunity of playing in the NFL. But I just took it a game at a time, and I was with the Colts, of course, for a year, and 5 with the Giants, 5 with the Vikes, a couple with Seattle. I just wanted to make the team and get the respect of my teammates, and more importantly, what Mom and Dad told me is, get a respect for yourself and keep your integrity and second effort going at all times. And, I stretched out your question and everything, but I really never entered my mind to be a professional football player throughout high school and even in college. Never entered my mind.
Well, for the fans who don't know it, Bob went to school at Western Michigan University, which incidentally is where new Vikings wide receiver Greg Jennings went to school. And Bob, as a Michigan guy growing up there, went to college there, obviously you started with the Colts and ended up with the Giants. How does a Midwestern guy end up with the New York Giants as a free agent to really open your NFL career?
See, I turned down full-ride scholarships out of high school, and I went to Grand Rapids Junior College. I never want to tell people how hard I had to work or how hard I worked. I figured everybody did that to be successful, but with no aspirations, just to go through and have fun. And I have an engineering degree, of course, and I enjoyed that. But I started out in junior college, played 3 sports there, and then I got a full ride to Michigan Tech on a basketball scholarship. And then when I was at Michigan Tech after a year, there were no girls up there. And, and as ugly as I am, I go, it's bad enough 35-1 boys to girls. I said, I'm out of here. So I went to Western Michigan where the ratio was 2-1 girls to guys. And I said, this is a better atmosphere for me. And played football there. And I made the basketball team, but I wasn't eligible for a year, so they wanted me just to work out with them. And that was one mistake I made in my life because I don't like that, so I quit the basketball team because I couldn't play until the following year. And when they came time to draft, By Green, God bless him, our trainer, when they had the different scouts come over, they said, Lurtsema, there's a kid with attitude and great agility. And they watched me in a couple agility drills and whatnot. And after seeing me there and the recommendation I got from By Green and, of course, Coach Bill Doolittle, the Baltimore Colts took me as a free agent. And once I got there, Sheila comes up and said, we're cutting you. I played against New Orleans Saints, and they said, we're going to cut you today. But, Bob, nobody's going to pick you up. That's why we're cutting you early, and we're going to put you in the practice squad. So that's how it started. I mean, I was going, okay, and just going through and just trying as hard as I could. It's an interesting story from the standpoint, not that I'm patting myself on the back or not if it's all about me, but it just shows you, don't hold yourself hostage. I mean, there's every imaginable door that will open for you to be successful if you approach it with a good, strong, positive attitude and keep your integrity. And with me moving around, I'm a young kid from the standpoint of I had no direction. I didn't know what I wanted to be, and I just knew I needed a college education. And that's basically the way I attacked it. That's why I said earlier, I never thought I'd make it and play professional football.
After spending all the time in the Midwest, though, you did end up in New York with the Giants. What was that transition like for you to live in New York for 5 years?
That's a whole new ballgame out there. I mean, but I got to New York by Don Shula. Now, my second year, Bubba Smith came in there with the Colts, and Don Shula came up to me and said, Bob, we have so many defensive linemen. He said, I can ask no more of you. I'm going to trade you. I'm going to try to trade you. Is there any club you want to go to? And I said, well, how about the Giants? They were 1-12-1 the year before. And I thought to myself, I have a better opportunity to make it there. He said, okay, I'll call the Giants, see if we can work out a trade. So they traded me to the New York Giants for a 4th-round draft choice. So Shula got me to New York. Now, when you're in New York, oh, man, I mean, I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's a fairly large town, but nothing like New York. The pace is unbelievable, but they're the most knowledgeable fans. I think in the NFL, more so than the Vikings, more so than Seattle, Pittsburgh, whatever. Very knowledgeable fans, and they started recognizing me immediately on the streets. Here I'm basically a rookie, even though I had the 1 year with the Colts, because that was a practice squad. They would stop you on the street and talk to you, and all of a sudden you go, wait a minute, what's going on here? And they really embrace the athletes out there, and that's what I learned the most. And I learned how to handle the media as such. And I got in trouble a few times with the media because I'd ask a question, I'd give an honest answer. And sometimes that doesn't always work out.
Well, you had a unique opportunity, a traditional baseball stadium. How was Yankee Stadium as a football venue? Not good from the standpoint. The first 3 weeks, we wouldn't be moving the Yankee Stadium until the Yankees were out of there because we had the same locker room as the Yankees. But you had the dirt field was right in the middle of the football field. The dirt diamond basically from baseball.
And so it was not the best football stadium, and it was not, as far as viewing, there weren't a lot of great seats were lost because of the distance, how they placed 100 yards inside Yankee Stadium. So the venue itself wasn't pure football, but the fans were pure football, so they overshadowed anything that we had.
Well, that baseball dirt did help out with the old saying of the NFL is 3 yards in a cloud of dust, so it did help for that.
They could have come up with that saying right there in New York.
Osborne, nowhere. Lurtsema sits on him, number 71.
Well, this is one that may evoke some anger on your part, so I have to ask you this question. In your first official NFL year in 1967, you returned a kickoff for 7 yards, and then in 68, you returned another one for 14 yards. Do you believe the Giants hindered your ability to be a Hall of Fame candidate by not allowing you to be a full-time kickoff return man in New York?
Absolutely. I mean, this blocking on the wedge, that wasn't for me. I mean, that's where I returned those kickoffs because I was part of the wedge, and I was a regular, of course, on top of everything else. And lucky enough, I made first team All Rookie and All Pro Honorable Mention. I had quite a few awards presented my way. But yeah, they should have moved me back there in the old end zone. I would have taken my 4.85 speed and just blasted through everybody.
Was your first thought when you picked up those kickoffs one of two things? You tell me which one it is. I'm going to score, or please don't fumble.
Actually, it's please don't fumble. I was a tight end my last year at Western Michigan. At Michigan Tech and junior college, I was a defensive tackle, but I wanted to play tight end. So I started to scramble, and when the big boys, it's a little faster than college and high school, and these boys coming after you, I went, oh my gosh. I took the least amount of contact possible and looked like I was trying as hard as I could and went down as easily as possible. We're told if the ball comes your way, don't touch it. So it's bad enough I touched it, and number two, there's no way I was going to drop it. Funny you bring that up. I'm chuckling to myself now because I remember those now, but I've forgotten them from 40 years ago.
Well, like I said, it's a little bit like the phantom punch in boxing. You just look for something close and go down. Well,
so true.
Bob, you're known as a generous and affable man off the field, but we have seen a nasty streak from you when you're on the field playing football, and I think you've even been tossed out of a game or two. How does a player flip the switch once a game starts to play such a violent game like football?
It's not as violent as people think. When I was flipping the switch, actually, my rookie year, my last game, I got thrown out. Jim Gray, the offensive lineman for St. Louis, blocked him, and he started a fight with me because we had an interception. I got thrown out of the game, and I went, oh my gosh, this is it. I'll never come back as a Giant again. But I got fined by the league. They fined me $25 for being ejected. So the figures have changed a little bit since then. The part of playing a violent game, it's a competition. See, there is eye in team, especially with football. There's 11 eyes in team. You get 11 eyes, then you have a team. It's one-on-one. I have to do my job to the best of my ability, and it's an individual contest against that offensive lineman or a fullback, whoever's going to block me or attempt to block me. It's competition, and I like it because you're going to get about 60 different times to grade yourself. And by not giving your best, you really can't grade yourself because you can't improve yourself because you don't know what you did or how you can be consistent. I was very hard on myself, but every play was fun. And before a game, Tom, I was scared to death. Absolutely. I knew I was going to get my butt kicked. I just didn't know how bad. But I didn't want this to be the worst game of my NFL career because you're going to have bad games sometime in your career. So that kept me going. Don't make this your worst game of your career. So I was always mentally prepared individually. But once that first hit came, then there was 60 minutes of heaven out there. I've tried many times, I'm even stuttering with you, to give the right words to know the feeling of what it is to be out there. It's just like you're in heaven. I mean, it's one-on-one, and it's just a beautiful thing. And then when you win the game, and with your teammates, and you do it together, and that day just continues to be more and more perfect.
Well, I think you found the right words, but I have to follow up on the question about the fine once you got ejected. It was $25 you said that was the fee. Did you ask the NFL for a payment plan, and have you paid that fine off at this point?
I fought it and fought it and fought it, and ended up spending $3,000 in attorney fees, so I finally gave in.
After 5 years in the Big Apple in New York, you arrived in Minnesota in 1972, where Bud Grant was your head coach. What was the difference in style under Grant versus your final coach in New York, Alex Webster?
Alex Webster, he was a man's man. He would just line you up, and he didn't have to motivate you. He worked hard himself. He couldn't coach in today's league. Alex Webster couldn't. Not because he's not a good coach, but because he assumed that players would prepare the way he prepared for a game, or have my attitude and approach the game that way. And I was with Leslie Frazier a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him a question about, there's no contact or no full pads now, basically, in practices and everything. Mm-hmm. And we started talking. He said, well, it's going to be more on the coaches. And he said, Bob, but when I bring in a player, I really like this from Frazier. He said, when I bring a player in, if I have to give motivational talks each and every week to get them to play, then I don't want them. Mm-hmm. And that really grabbed my personality, and it actually is a direct reflection on somebody like Alex Webster. Say, hey, I played the game. I loved it. I gave what I had. Now I expect you to do the same. I'll prepare you the best that I can. And a lot of the athletes of today, you got to kick them in the fanny to get them going, which I don't understand, but that's just the way it is now. And football 30, 40 years ago is obviously a lot different. But there are a lot of great players right now. I mean, like Adrian Peterson, you're never going to meet a finer person, and I can go on and on. So I don't want that to be a negative on the entire team in the 2013.
It's funny that you say that, Bob, because one of the players in the Vikings right now, Brian Robinson, all of his family members drop by our site, and we get updates all the time about how much effort he put in to make sure that he's the best he can be, and he's coming back from a late season injury last year that he played through. So we do see that fire in the belly, certainly for some of these athletes still.
Yeah, Brian does. I don't like Brian at all, because I used to have the playoff season sack record until he came. I had 3.5, and he got 4, so he broke my record. So I'm very upset with him.
Are you on speaking terms yet again with him?
Well, he gave me a couple grand to say, hey, come on, Bob, here's a couple grand, get over it. I said, okay. He works really hard. I mean, when I told him that, he looked at me like, oh my gosh. I mean, it wasn't, is Bob serious, or what's going on with Lurtz? Is he messing around with me again? So we got a few laughs out of that.
You mentioned the Alex Webster and Leslie Frazier style. How is Bud Grant different?
Bud was one that would play every percent to the nth degree, and by that I mean if he can improve 0.25% here and 0.25% here, as far as whether it's play selection, calls, sideline heaters, whatever he could pick up, all of a sudden you'd feel he'd be like 4 or 5% better than the opposing team. And his whole philosophy was, keep the game close for 3 quarters, and then give me a chance in the 4th quarter. I'll find a way for you guys to win. So he was a percentage guy, and there were some athletes that were a lot better than me that he cut, but they made mental mistakes, and couldn't be reliable. And Bud always wanted predictability. In other words, like myself, I'm going to get my butt kicked, but I'm going to be in the right spot when I get killed. So now, Lurtz is going to be here, Now we know how we have to cover them, with Alan Page or Carl Eller or whatever, work our defenses around that. So you've got to give Bud, as a player, predictability for your play as an athlete, and then let Bud work with it. And as far as the heaters go, he always felt that if you needed heaters on the sidelines, or hand warmers or whatever, you weren't in the ball game. If you want to be in the game even when you're on the sidelines, because the adrenaline will keep you warm. And he always referred to the last pipeline and hunters, when they were cold and until they see their deer or whatever they're hunting,
yep.
Then they're warm from them until they get back to the camp. So he worked that philosophy, and I must say I bought into it and believed it, and so the weather we blocked the weather out. But a very, 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 very good coach, deserving Hall of Famer, who worked every percentage right to the T.
You were a starter in New York, and after you left the Vikings in Seattle, you were a starter there as well. Yet you got the Benchwarmer Bob nickname. Who gave you the name? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. It wasn't from my play, because we used to have a 14-man huddle and everything, because I could play all 5 positions. We might have a 5-man line, or who knows what we might do, but we'd have 3 guys run off at the last second.
First shot of the 14-man huddle.
Yeah, I was going to say that was the first shot of it. You've got them all out there, and they're coming off rather slowly.
Winston's coming off. And let's see. Also, they delay. Jim Marshall comes out, and Hilgenberg comes out. 11 men have to be on the field at the snap of the ball. Terry Brown's gone in. 3rd and 7. They're looking for a pass, the Vikings. Bradshaw will accommodate. Trying to get out of the pocket. He's tripped up. There was a great charge by Bob Lurtsema.
That's twice so.
Also, Alan Page, who got a hand on his ankle.
And Don Shula didn't like that. He's on the rules committee, so he actually had that rule changed that you can only have 11 men in the huddle. And it's because of us having a 14-man huddle. And then that bit the Vikings in the butt 2 years ago up in New Orleans. And they got caught with 12 men in the huddle. But my name itself came from Twin Cities Federal. Jim Lovedahl, who wrote commercials for Twin Cities Federal, which is a savings and loan here in the Twin Cities, they wanted to get a second stringer with a different name, good looking. So I nailed 2 out of 3 because they wanted this person, whoever they picked, and they wanted this person who was a complete unknown, second stringer, different name. When they walked down the street, say, hey, there's what's-his-face from PCF. They wanted the person, when they saw us, to identify with the product. And my gosh, a successful advertising career is 2.5 years, a campaign,
Mm-hmm.
Ours lasted over 12 years. It was amazing because when you work as hard as you can, nobody can make fun of you because you can't do any better. If you left yourself or held yourself hostage, like I said earlier, and didn't really give your best, then when some people make fun of you, you don't take it the same way because you think he's not kidding because you haven't let yourself down. Well, they came up and they I had to read a couple commercials, and the first one was, you probably don't recognize me with my helmet off. And I put my helmet on. Come to think of it, you don't recognize me with my helmet on either. and they all started out like this. They had Bob Lurtsema Day at the Met. Nobody showed up, right? I said there must be one big traffic jam out there. But all the commercials, they're the ones that made fun of me as a backup. It was humorous, done very professional, and with integrity. And people say, man, weren't you upset that they call you Benchwarmer? I said, well, that's what it was.
And I even remember the commercial that you're talking about where they had Bob Lurtsema Day, and you said everybody's in a traffic jam. And I recall the punchline being something like, you would have thought at least my family would have showed up.
You think at least my wife and kids would show up. We put a little artificial turf out there, a little 4x4, piece of green right in the middle of the old net. And this was in February or whatever, season's over. Then we had one set of tracks going out to that green. We put a microphone on top of it. But everyone walked in the same set of tracks.
So it looked like just one person.
Oh yeah, I mean that was a riot. It's one of my favorites is when I'm tailgating at the net. I'm outside in full uniform and saying, "Boy, it's great to be here in Twin Cities. You know, a little more mustard, please, and more." And I'm having a hot dog, and then the loudspeaker says, "Will Bob Lurtsema please report to the bench?" I go, "Oh my gosh, it's game time." Well, now into the commercial, I can't get in because all the fans are trying to get in. So I go, excuse me, please.
Obviously, the series was so effective and made you such name recognition, really, along with the stars that were on the team, probably more so, that I'm curious what your impression was when you show up at a playoff game, and I think it was against St. Louis in 1974, in the upper deck of the Met Stadium, it had a Bob Lurtsema for President sign.
Yeah, I saw that. Lurtsema for President. I mean, unbelievable how it makes you feel. I'm just shaking my head.
Well, I understand the Benchwarmer nickname could be humbling at times. I'll see if you remember the story. It was something that Lions quarterback Bill Munson said to you when you sacked him in a late 1974 game. If you recall it, can you share with the folks what he said to you in that game?
Absolutely. The first play I'm in the first quarter, I get in there, my first play, and I go, wow, here I am, you know. I go in, I sack Bill Munson, you know, the 23-yard line at the old net. I'm going, wow, my first play, quarterback sack. You know, I got a big smile. I'm happy, and I'm thinking how they're showing a TCF commercial or this a replay of my great play. And my helmet gets tighter because my head's getting bigger. And Bill Munson, he saw the thrill of victory, I think, in my eyes, and looked in my eyes, and his exact words were, "My God, are we that far behind already?" Back to the bench I go. And
that ruined the whole point of sacking him. You lead into a question I've always had about you is you did play, as you mentioned before, kind of in a five-man line, almost a swingman role. I mean, when you look at old footage of you, you'd play left end, right end, tackle, wherever they would put you. From your perspective, how hard is it to be effective when you move around so much? Like you said, you don't know who's going to block you. You don't necessarily know where the things are going because you don't have a feel for the game. How difficult is that?
Yeah, not that difficult if you do your homework. I didn't play a little bit of linebacker, not much at all. As far as the line play goes, when I was up here, now I'm a 7-year veteran all of, and 5 years of regular with the New York Giants. You pretty much, I started out as a right tackle there, and then they needed some help, and I was versatile enough to go to end. So, I learned all the positions. And as far as the players go, I would take notes when I watched the films of each lineman to see whether he, pulls out to his right, leans his shoulder too far, looking for some way to attack him differently. I'm not going to attack them all the same. Some you're going to put a power move on, power rush. Others you're just going to give them a head slap, working light. You watch that and you study it, and you hone your skills. You're not successful if you don't work at it. Put in a strong 8 hours, and no matter what you do without lollygagging, you got to be successful. You can't miss. So I did the extra work, and that was when I studied them. The coaches gave us their tendencies, like on split formation, they passed like 62%, but on split left flex, it was 100% passing. So then if they came out in that formation, then you say, ooh, this is a pass. Then you're going to have a different type move on. You can fake a power rush, like you're playing the run or something. You can do a lot of different things, whether from spin move, who knows what. When they give you the game plan, they give you percentages, it's up to us to know what they are.
Now you look at defensive linemen, you moved around and you really could fill any spot effectively. Now defensive linemen aren't specialized anymore. A defensive tackle is just that. He's not a nose tackle. He's not a three technique. Why do you think some teams don't develop versatile backups like you served in Minnesota so they can maximize roster spots?
That's a great question. That's an outstanding question. I watch defensive line play all the time. Now, I watch some of these defensive linemen, they don't even take the first step, they're catching. But they got two-gap responsibility. They're letting, they want them to take up two bodies and to stop that area. And back when I played, when we had that, you wanted a little more agility. You wanted to be able to really have the agility. You can make adjustments on different players. But the thing that you watch now with these players, because some are just tackles, period, right? Some are just right ends, period. You watch them, they're not disciplined. Inside the 10-yard line, defensive lineman, you do not get out of your lane as a defensive lineman. Same thing, you need somebody deep as the deepest back, so nobody can get outside you, yet you see it happen all the time. And because the linemen now, they're just basically one way. Most of them are just one system players, and they want to just be a sack master, right? Well, the quarterback's scooting outside them and going for touchdowns or giving areas to throw. Where if you know enough about it and are versatile enough, you can accomplish both. But your awareness and homework really end up with a rather successful career.